US President Donald Trump has used the 75th United Nations General Assembly to step up his attacks on China over trade and the coronavirus pandemic. In a pre-recorded address, Trump said the UN must hold Beijing accountable for its actions during the outbreak and also blamed the World Health Organization for misleading the rest of the world. He also praised US efforts to deliver a vaccine and defeat the pandemic, as the latest figures from Johns Hopkins University show America's COVID-19 death toll has passed the 200,000 mark. Trump's comments come as tensions between the world's two biggest economies escalate on a number of other issues, including trade, technology, Hong Kong, and China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims.
We must hold accountable the nation which unleashed this plague onto the world, China. In the earliest days of the virus, China locked down travel domestically while allowing flights to leave China and infect the world. The Chinese government and the World Health Organization, which is virtually controlled by China, falsely declared that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission. Later, they falsely said people without symptoms would not spread the disease. The United Nations must hold China accountable for their actions.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Anna Ashton in Washington. She's Director of Business Advisory Services at the US-China Business Council. Welcome back to the program, Anna. Now, there's nothing really new in what Donald Trump had to say at the UN General Assembly in terms of his attacks on China, but what was extraordinary was that he used this forum, which is normally one that's, I guess, more polite, reserved and diplomatic, to launch his tirade against Beijing. But did you get the sense that it was perhaps more directed at US voters in the lead up to November's presidential elections?
Oh, absolutely, Oscar. I think that you're right on the money with that. It is very consistent with his domestic messaging to the American populace about why we're in the situation we're in. And it's interesting, as you noted, that this happened on the same day that we reached the 200,000 deaths mark, which is the most deaths of any other country.
That's right, and let's look at that rather grim milestone because, as we had mentioned, those figures come from Johns Hopkins University. And back in March, President Trump said that if deaths were between 100,000 and 200,000, the country would have done a, quote, very good job. Do you think he's ramping up his attacks on China with regards to this pandemic to deflect away from I guess, his own missteps and mishandling of the pandemic in his own country?
I'm not sure if I would characterize it exactly that way, although I certainly would understand the viewpoint that may be the case. But I would say that, the president was preparing to run for re-election based on the strength of the U.S. economy. And the COVID-19 outbreak really undid what he could claim to have achieved in terms of strong economic growth happening in the country. That we still haven't recovered. We still aren't back to normal. We still have a lot of people who are out of work. And as a result of the fact that he could no longer run on that platform, I think he pivoted pretty heavily and now increasingly heavily to focusing on making this a referendum on his China policy versus what he says a President Biden China policy would be.
Now, one of the latest flashpoints in the US-China relationship has come in the unlikely form of TikTok, the popular video sharing app that's been used mainly by millennials and other young people. But over the weekend, we saw quite a dramatic development. Donald Trump appeared to give his tacit approval to a partnership that's been proposed by TikTok's Chinese owners ByteDance, as well as Oracle and Walmart in the US. They propose to create a US-based entity known as TikTok Global. But this deal seems to raise more questions than answers because it's not clear who will actually own TikTok in the end. Trump insists that it'll be a US entity. China insists it'll be a Chinese one. Or what's your understanding? Who has the upper hand here?
It really is raising more questions than it is answers. It seems that there will still be a significant share of the company owned by ByteDance, but it will not be maybe the majority, that there will be a diversification of owners. it- I guess one of the questions that it raises is how is that sufficient, or is that sufficient changing of ownership to satisfy what the executive order was trying to achieve, which was ensuring that any data collected in the United States on US citizens isn't transferred back to the Chinese government. I guess the president thinks it is. I think that there are members of Congress who won't think that it is. And what we've seen in previous months is that when Congress is dissatisfied with the extent to which the president is cracking down on a perceived security threat posed by China, Congress will take actions of its own, which is something that we see happening this week with the Uyghur situation in Xinjiang.
Okay, Anna Ashton, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you as always for joining us from Washington.